I'm Dick Clark, and welcome to CEO Perspective. Thank you for joining us today. How many times have you gone to work feeling fine and the next day you know you're sick? Or you send your child to school and he or she comes home and the next thing you know, your child is sick. That's probably because somebody went to work when they were sick and you ended up getting it. The same as one of your children goes to school and the parents have to go to work, so they send their kid to school, sometimes not feeling their best. And the next thing you know, the whole family has a virus. I think the one thing that the CEO Roundtable has accomplished is that we recognize that the next normal, there's going to be 4 bellwether trends, and one of those is safety. Being able to go to work and have a cleaner environment, being able to go to a restaurant and it be clean and tables be clean and sterilized. So what we wanted to do today was to devote this show to talk about what technologies are being developed that's going to help keep you healthy when you're at work and keep your children healthy when they're at school. And one of our CEO Roundtable members invited one of his guests who is CEO of a company who is changing the way the air quality will be in buildings, in schools. It's fascinating. So right after this news item, we're going to introduce them and you'll get a chance to meet them and hear from them. So coming up right after this, stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, it's a pleasure to have two very, very astute people who certainly understand technology, but I'm going to introduce a member of our CEO Roundtable, and that's Lou Zaccone, who is the founder and the CEO of Bluegrass Ocean. I've known Lou for a long time, and he has a background as well as our guest, but I'm not going to steal Lou's thunder, and I'm going to ask Lou to introduce our guest, and you will be fascinated with what you learn, what his company is doing, and how it's going to change your life and many other people. So Lou, please introduce our guest.
Thank you, Dick. It's a pleasure to be here. Our guest, I've known Mark for quite a few years, and we've spent quite a bit of time together. We've spent time together as coworkers, as competitors, as just interested parties. So I'm happy to introduce the CEO of IAQ CPR, Mark Fauter. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you, Lou. Great to be on the show with you today.
Mark, it's I can't wait to have people hear about what you're doing. Mark had a chance to join our CEO Roundtable and talk in depth about his company, but the technology he's introducing is incredible. So, Mark, if you would tell us what your company does, how have you invented technology that's going to make the environment and the air in particular less dangerous, more germ-free? Anyway, I'd like to hear more about it, and I certainly want our guests to hear about it. Mark, it's yours.
Well, thank you, Dick, and appreciate the opportunity to be on your show today. So really, what the technology that we have is a significant improvement in disruptive technology compared to what's available on the market now. There are several technologies, including ionization, UV, ventilation, that help improve indoor air quality. The big difference between what we do and what's on the market today is we hold 4 patents, and those 4 patents allow us to provide regulation of ionization in space, in the space where we live, work, and breathe. And this cleans pathogens like COVID, eliminates odors, cleans particulates in the air, such as volatile organic compounds, VOCs, and it also helps achieve energy savings.
For those people who are not authorities in air quality and so on, does that mean that you have to completely change out your current air handling system, or is this something that gets added to it that significantly changes the air that's placed in the room?
This is something that's added to existing air conditioning units. So it allows the regulated control of ionization in the discharge of the air handling unit. So it discharges those into the space. We measure in the space, goes through a controller, and then regulates the ideal environment.
Now, Lou, you're no stranger to this subject either. There's been, over the years that you have worked in your previous position, large companies have been concerned about not only air conditioning and air quality, but also being able to keep the cost of it reasonable. So, what's been happening in that world as Mark and his company are developing the new technology that will completely change the way the quality, at least, of the air that's going into rooms? So what have you seen the trends up to today?
Sure, Dick. In my prior life, I spent a lot of time in this area, and it's kind of funny that prior to COVID, which has turned into quite an accelerant of a lot of technology, including this, prior to COVID, we couldn't give away an air quality study. It was kind of the asbestos of today. Nobody wants to know they have asbestos in their building. Nobody kind of wanted to know they had an air quality problem. That's really changed. So the first thing that many owners wanted us to do was just increase the ventilation rate in the building, bring in more outside air since it tends to be much cleaner. That tends to cost a lot more energy because you have to cool it, heat it, dehumidify it to bring it into the space. And in a lot of cases, the air conditioning systems weren't the right size to bring in that quantity of outside air. So then we moved to a technology called bipolar ionization, which is a device that's added to the air handler, but it kind of lacks the control. It lacks the surety that you would want as an owner to ensure the safety of the environment.
Going back to Mark, the need and desire for this, even though the pandemic has, I guess, is turning the corner, I think the sensitivity to air quality and going to work and your children in school is increasing significantly. So where do you see the application and kind of in what priority order? Because everybody's going to want what you have. So how do you prioritize where it's best and most important and most in demand?
Well, first of all, some of the studies behind this, even though we're at the cusp of COVID being under control, prior to COVID, the EPA released studies that said that pollutants inside are 2 to 5 times higher than they are outside. Worker productivity can be impacted by up to 11%. So this was really, indoor air quality was on the cusp of being the next big thing to impact the HVAC industry. As Lou said, COVID has been an accelerant. Now, where do we focus our priority? Right now, some of our first customers, first people that we're working with are school districts. So we have beta projects right now. And we're also, it's extremely important to realize that we're working with universities to have independent third-party tests on our products and our claims. And the other thing that's extremely important is we're working with ASHRAE. That's the governing body for the industry. So it's a combination of the impact of occupants of buildings, the ability to be far more productive, focusing on the technology and making sure it's a proven technology, and then focusing in the priority areas like our schools, where we can help ensure the safety of children in the classroom.
You mentioned something when you spoke to the CEO roundtable about productivity. You just touched upon it, but I think most people probably have not realized the effect that air quality has on productivity, and of course for the CEOs that are looking at the possibility of including your technology in their buildings and in their schools. The idea of productivity and increasing the output and obviously decreasing absenteeism. I took English as a foreign language in college. In order to keep the organization productive. So can you talk a little bit about how air quality does impact productivity and ultimately the bottom line?
Sure, great question. So in the industry, there's this rule called the 330-300 rule. And when you take a look at just generally speaking, of course, when you take a look at the average cost of utilities in a building, that's $3 a square foot. This office space rents, leases around $30 a square foot. But if you take a look at what the people in the building cost, that's about $300 per square foot. So if you think about this, if we've got an industry, and this is called the performance contracting industry, that focuses on saving energy in buildings. So they try to save 20 to 30% of the $3. Where the EPA states that productivity can be impacted up to 11%. And then there was also a double-blind study conducted by Harvard back in 2015 that showed people in well-ventilated, high-quality environments had to double the cognitive rate of those who work in the average building, for example. So when you take the combination of productivity, you take a look at how the work environment improves. Improving productivity by 11% is the equivalent of saving 11 times the utility bill when you're taking a look at a cost per square foot. So people in buildings are more productive, businesses are more successful, schools have a lower absenteeism rate, and it's all in all, it has an impact from a productivity perspective that's going to impact how we think about our environment when we're in any kind of building.
Lou, as you watch the industry as you have for so many years, what changes in attitude do you see in the C-suite regarding energy savings, as it might relate to climate change? What are the trends that you're seeing basically in industry, more so necessarily in schools, but including hospitals that we've talked about before?
Well, thank you for that. Certainly the cost of energy has become, it's gotten on the radar screen of the C-suite for sure, but probably the more important one, the one that's more, it's more worthy of note, is more and more organizations, be they corporations or schools or healthcare organizations, more and more corporations are looking to establish and achieve sustainability goals. Sustainability goals have to do with the energy consumption. It has to do with all of the things that impact our planet. And some of them, in fact, are paying their C-suite executives on sustainability results. So it's no longer just the whitewash that you put in your annual report to let investors feel pretty good about the company. They're putting some teeth into how important is the safety of our building, the sustainability of our building, the retention of our workers, because worker retention has become a critical issue for business productivity and for business continuance. So I think probably, in a word, sustainability is probably the key factor.
Wow. There is so much to be learned, and Mark, I can't tell you how much our CEO roundtable and I personally appreciate not only knowing you for many years, but seeing you now as the CEO of this incredible company. And I would love to devote an hour to talking about that, but our show is a short show, and we will have at the end the way to get in touch and the website for Mark's company so that you can learn more about it. So, gentlemen, I appreciate your taking the time to be here, and I look forward to hearing more about what you're doing. So thank you, Lou, and thank you, Mark, for being here today. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, I can see, and you can see, that changes are coming. And maybe we can go to work and not be as sick as we have in the past. Not necessarily with COVID, but with the average flus and bugs that kids and workers get. So I think it's very important that you follow what Mark is doing and follow his firm, because who knows, it may be your school, it may be your workplace that cared enough about the employees and the students. So thank you so much. Remember, every Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, we're going to feature one of our CEOs in the country on new technology that's hitting the street that you may not know about. I'm Dick Clark, your host, and thank you for joining CEO Perspective. You have a great afternoon.